So the Rising Tide is the second installment of the Final Fantasy 16 DLC following Echoes of the Fallen, which came out a few months prior. And in this video, I'm going to be doing my very best to do a non-spoilery kind of review for you guys. I'll show you guys some kind of general B-roll in the background, maybe fighting some kind of general enemies, different things like that. If you don't want to see any of that, then just kind of maybe scroll down and just listen to the review part. Again, I'm going to try to avoid as many potential spoilers as I possibly can. I'm going to be avoiding all the major stuff, but trying to give you as much information as I possibly can for the sake of a review without spoiling any kind of big things, if you will. Again, doing my very best to do that. So if you do enjoy this one, be sure to like, subscribe for more, and let's go ahead and jump straight into this. One thing I got to get out of the way first is a huge thanks to Square Enix for providing me with a copy of these DLCs, and of course, actually the base game of Final Fantasy 16 when that came out as well. I do want to say this is not a sponsored video. I'm not getting paid or anything like that. I'm not obligated to say anything nice or good. Just because I got a free code does not mean I'm going to, say something nice. This is completely my own subjective, experience and thoughts and opinions on the DLC. Again, we're focusing in on the Rising Tide. If you want to see my review for Echoes of the Fallen, I've already reviewed that, as well as my review for the base game of Final Fantasy 16. One thing I'll say is, just like in Echoes of the Fallen, you have to do a bunch of side quests in order to unlock it. It's the exact same side quest, so if you've already unlocked Echoes of the Fallen, you'll also have the Rising Tide DLC unlocked as well. But that's one gripe I had with Echoes of the Fallen, that they made it kind of like this barrier where you had to do all of these different side quests first in order to even unlock the DLC. And that's not something that I'm a big fan of, so that's kind of something that I don't like to see. But again, that's for both of these DLCs. It's the same side quest. Beyond that, once you actually go ahead and pick up the quest in Clive's, I guess his office, whatever it's called, I can't remember what it's called, his room or whatever, in the hideaway, you go ahead to the desk and you pick it up amongst his letters. Once you do that, you're basically jumping straight into it. It's a mysterious letter, and you got to figure out what's going on. Now, you've seen the trailers, right? So I'm going to be talking about stuff that we've seen in the trailers, such as the fact that we do have a new ability, and that's all tied to the fact that Leviathan is in this DLC. The Leviathan is the focus of this DLC, but the lore surrounding Leviathan and everything kind of in that nature of things, I'm trying to be very careful not to spoil anything. I found that the lore and the story was very interesting. They kind of did it a little bit more briefly, and for sake of transparency, it took me about 2.5 hours technically to beat it. I did struggle a little bit on the final boss, I'll admit, so that's why I'm kind of trying to kind of account for that. It took me technically 3 hours to get through the whole thing, but that's because, again, I failed a few times on the final boss. I will say that there's going to be different enemies that you're going to be encountering that you may not have encountered in the actual base game. And there's a couple different small kind of, I guess, mini bosses, you could say, leading up to the final boss, as well as some, kind of bigger sort of bosses leading up to the final boss. So it's something that it's not just like, okay, get through this story and then the only boss is the final boss. You're going to have multiple different kind of bosses between kind of, bigger kind of bosses, maybe smaller, kind of more powerful enemy types, if that makes sense. They're not technically bosses, but I guess could be classified as mini bosses. So that was nice to see that they fit a bunch of that in there. In terms of the visuals and stuff, I'm a huge sucker for very vibrant, colorful, bright looking things. And the whole environment, as you've seen from the trailers, is the fact that we have, rich blue skies and blue waters and rich green forestry and whatnot, and just very vibrant. Very, very nice to look at. I think this is probably the nicest location in all of Final Fantasy 16, including the base game. Personally speaking, again, these things are subjective. The combat felt great. I like the new abilities that they introduced. Again, I don't want to spoil too much. I may show a little bit of some of it on screen as B-roll, but I'm not going to go super in depth with it. So that's what I mean by when I was saying, there might be some mild stuff that some people might consider spoilers, and maybe that's stuff you want to see. Again, I'm trying to avoid the big stuff, and I'm not showing you the whole skill tree and different things like that as well. So I'm trying to keep it at least on the lower end. So yeah, those abilities are really nice. Again, it's the power of water, right? We have all these other different powers, right? We have, fire with Ifrit, we have ice with Shiva. And then of course now, we have the water abilities thrown into the mix. And I like them. They're really cool. And once you start kind of figuring out how they work properly and whatnot, they're really nice. Like I said, the story kept me intrigued, interested. They could have went a little bit deeper with the story, maybe. This is something, again, that's very subjective, right? Because I'm the kind of person, if you're going to be, giving us a story DLC, I like more bite-sized stuff, like 5-ish hours or so. Now, I will say that if you do all the side quests, there's a bunch of side quests in this new location. And if you do all those, it could probably push the DLC to like 8-ish hours. If you really take your time with it, or if you're on, Final Fantasy mode, for example, then it might take you much longer than that. It might take you, multiple hours, like 10 to 15 hours, maybe even more, depending on your skill level and whatnot. Most of the enemies were level 50. I think that's similar to what they were in Echoes of the Fallen, if I remember correctly. And like I said, final boss had a couple elements that were a little bit annoying to kind of figure out what was going on with it. But it was fun. It was a fun challenge. It was, it kind of, what you would expect to see from these bosses, especially with, going through the base game with all these cinematic kind of shots and just these epic, grand boss fights. That's basically what it was, which was really, really a lot of fun, personally speaking. Beyond that, like I said, the combat is the combat, right? So the only thing different with the combat is the addition of the new Leviathan abilities, which I thought were nice. And like I said, the story is really intriguing. It explores a mysterious group of people and their story and their location. And things like that. So I don't want to spoil too much, but there was a lot of kind of, mystery involved in that kind of sense. And like I said, it's something that maybe they could have dug a little bit deeper lore wise, but I think it was satisfactory in my opinion. It might be something that might leave certain people wanting more. Other people might be fine with it as it is. I'm trying to make sure I'm not forgetting anything because again, I'd like to do these reviews kind of fresh once I just finish these games. But for the most part, I think it's a nice addition. I'm pretty sure that it also takes place before the end of Final Fantasy 16's main story, from what I could gather. I could be wrong about that, but from that's what made sense. Again, when you kind of jump into it, you'll see how it kind of fits into everything. But just like Echoes of the Fallen, I think it's kind of like a prequel to the ending, if you will. It's kind of like, cutting in a little segment to add this sort of side DLC over here, the side story. And again, it was a nice story. I liked it. I liked it better than Echoes of the Fallen. Echoes of the Fallen wasn't meant to be as deep. I think there's a lot more deep and a lot more rich, and it was a lot of fun. So all that considered, again, I am what people call a generous reviewer. So, keep that in mind. But I think it was a solid, like 8 out of 10. It was a lot of fun. I liked it. I really liked the environments. I liked the story. I liked the boss fights. I liked the new abilities. And so I think it's an 8 out of 10. An 8 out of 10 for me, for someone else might be a 7.5. So keep that in mind. Like I said, I can be a little bit of a generous reviewer. I might give like 0.5 higher than the average person. I don't know, but that's my experience. I liked it, right? So I don't know. I had fun with it, and I think you will too, especially if you enjoyed the base game. It's giving you more of basically that, but with a different kind of story kind of added on and tacked on to the game. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Again, I was trying to not go too spoilery into things, but hopefully it gives you sufficient thoughts to kind of outweigh if it sounds intriguing to you or not. Like I said, at the end of the day, reviews are subjective, meaning what I love you might hate and vice versa. So just keep that in mind. But again, if you have any questions, let me know. And if you've played it and beaten it yourself, I'm curious, what would you rate it out of 10? Do you think 8 is too high? Would you go higher or would you go lower? Let me know your thoughts. And until the next one, friends, game on. I'll see you guys soon. Hey you! What are you doing? Join the Skeleton Army! Do it today! Don't wait till tomorrow because tomorrow might never come. The Earth is gonna fade, that's inevitable. The next second of your life's not even promised, so you better think about where you're going, and you might as well just join the Skeleton Army. Plus, we do kind of like you a little bit, so it'd be nice to see you around here. But if you don't want to, hey, your loss. See you later.